Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see so many Sanskrit lovers here in this nice Auroville settlement. We are at this meeting at some intersection of modern computer technology and Sanskrit tradition. And it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra, who is a world-renowned specialist in Sanskrit and who made a very important contribution to its pedagogy and its dissemination. He was for many years in charge of the cultural program of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram here in Pondicherry. So he's somehow coming today to his sources. And he made many contributions. I can only list a few. He wrote many interesting books. One is called The Wonder That Is Sanskrit, which is a very nice introduction to the language and its delight. And it is not the wonder that was Sanskrit. It is the wonder that is Sanskrit. So he's emphasizing that it's still a living tradition. He wrote a very important book on chandas, on meters, Chandovali, and where every important meter is explained by its definition in a little poem that explains what is the meter and what is its name. He wrote also a very nice collection, Sostravali, very nice collection of devotional hymns. And he organized very many events in Pondicherry. For instance, regularly he was teaching a course for beginners on how to express yourself orally in Sanskrit. And I had the privilege to attend this course many years ago, and that was really a pleasure. And everybody was really happy to meet every morning. We would chant some stotras. This was a very nice experience. He is also a specialist in Avadana, which is this special training for exercising your memory, and it's an amazing capacity that some people are able to train to do many actions in parallel. And he received a very prestigious presidential award, the Badarayana Vyasa Reward. He is presently the director of the cultural program and the dean of the Rishihood University. And so it is my pleasure to introduce him. Sampad, are you with us?
But very briefly, I will talk about and explain a few things. What, when we are talking about computational linguistics, what machine can do, so what computational principles we can apply, tools we can use for making the texts understandable. But all those who are involved in this, in doing the work and taking forward the work, immense amount of works have been happening for last say 2 decades, and the work has increased, and the people like Ambaji, Girishji, Malharji, Gerard, Martin, uh, and many others who are involved and pioneering the work at different places. So this needs to be understood in proper perspectives, and they are the real expert ones who have been doing the work in a dedicated manner. So whatever little contribution I have in understanding and creating many digital content for last few years, or at least last 2 decades, my work has been there on the internet, works related to the Gita, Vedas, Upanishads, Tantra, and few other texts. So what basic understanding we all need to have, that those fundamental issues I will be discussing. There are plenty of tools we all are working, and then many new tools are uh, appearing, many new ideas and new techniques, new ways of presenting things are becoming more and more you know uh, available to us today by many minds. So we will discuss about that. But some of the basic fundamental understandings that we should have with regard to language. So when I deal with uh, this, for me, what is important, like when we delve deep into the tradition, especially the Vedas, Upanishads, and the Tantra has contributed immensely towards understanding the speech. So, a basic understanding of the origin of language from Indian perspective is something that we all need to have. What we are dealing with and then putting it into the computer language is the Vaikhari aspect, the communicative aspect, the surface level. But we need to go deep, because the tradition has always given importance to the deeper aspects of the speech, which should not be ignored, at least the fundamental understanding that we have. Otherwise, we may be employing a lot of techniques, which is fine, but we will miss the real point, because the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Tantra, applying the computational tools, we may achieve some grammatical understanding, but there are many nuances of the words, and which will not be clear unless and until we ourselves are deep into that spiritual tradition. We are deep into understand the subtle nuances of the language. That is why our Rishi tradition has always given importance to, like from Vaikhari to Para, the different grades of the speech. Anyway, the importance of language that we all know, the most beautiful saying by Dandi, idam andhan tamah kritsnam jayet bhuvanatrayam yadi shabdahvayam jyotirasansaram nadipyate. So without word, without language, the world would not have been there. So it would have plunged into blinding darkness. So we all know the importance of language, which is the extraordinary creation, and especially for the human soul, for the human beings. So the speech or the word that we are dealing with, the philological form of the language, is the outermost, the grossmost expression of the primordial creative vibration, the Adispanda, the sound in the supreme consciousness, which creates the world. So our Rishi tradition has given a lot of importance to the creative aspect of the word, which we need to keep in the background while dealing with the language. If that is what is missed, and how far the computational tools will be capable of bringing out that aspect, we do not know. But we need to keep it in mind. Otherwise, we'll miss the most important, what is fundamental to our texts, especially the texts which are foundational texts of our dharma, Sanatana Dharma. So, the essential inner nature of this creative vibration is what? The urge or will to how the language is originated. Look at the Indian perspectives that the essential inner nature of this creative vibration is the urge or will to express, will to manifest, will to objectify, will to bring forth or give form to what is held formlessly within the supreme consciousness of the spirit. So that's what our Rishi tradition believe as the origin of the language. So lot can be said about it, but our like perspectives, if you look at the grammatical tradition, this is what you find in Paniniya Shiksha, where it says atma buddhya sametya arthan manoyukte vivakshaya manah kayagni mahanti saprerayati marutam marutastūrasi charanmandram janayasi swaram sodernu murthne abhihato vaktra maruta varnan janayate. So out of desire to speak, vivaksha, the soul gathers all the meaning with the help of buddhi and impels the mind. It is the fire that is lit by coming together of anubhava or experience and vivaksha, a desire to express. So this is how the speech manifests. So every sound, look at the Vedic, Tantric, grammatical, poetic tradition, what is explained there has these two aspects. One is the audible sound, and then the subtler essential sound element behind the audible sound. So what we are dealing with, the modern philology dealing with, or the computational linguistics dealing with, is the more audible sound. So the subtler essential sound element behind the audible sound is something we do not know, like how that can be translated into through the computational tools. So that is something which need to be explored, and then experts can think about it. The subtler sound behind the audible sound is vibrant with the meaning natural to it. This vibrant sense sound is the real shabda, fundamental sound, and it is termed as spota by the grammarians of Sanskrit. The audible sound is the instrument of expression of the spota. This external sound is termed as a dhvani, which is the quality of shabda. Now, I am not going, in detail to the spota, dhvani, and all these things. I'll skip. But my whole point is that while we are dealing with the communicative aspect, we should not forget about the creative aspect of it, and then how, when we are saying the knowledge representation, so we can do justice to the knowledge representation, and then we have to think like how the computational tools can help us bringing out these inner nuances. So for this, a deeper understanding of our tradition, what has been there with regard to speech in the Vedas, in the Tantras, in the grammatical tradition, in the poetic tradition, and in many other traditions, including not what has been there only in Sanskrit, but there are plenty of materials which are available in the regional languages also with regard to the philosophy of the language, the deeper nuances of the words. The same word can have multi layers of the meaning. This is what creates the difficulty in understanding. So we can represent how, so we have to understand where is the limitation of the understanding of the human mind and limitation of the computational tools, how far it can do justice to the knowledge representation, and then how far the human mind is limited. That also like we need to understand. And then what needs to be done for expanding this understanding. So what is needed, that also like we need to understand, so then we can prepare ourselves for a complete understanding of what we are dealing with. So I'll just skip all these things. Now coming to like the Vedic tantric tradition, the grammatical tradition, the poetic tradition. So how much importance they have given to the various grades of speech, para, pashanti, madhyama, vaikhari. So vaikhari, ultimately para, which is nishabdam tat parabrahma, the silent sound. The speech comes out of the silence and ultimately it has to merge into silence. So the words, what we have talked about in the Vedic and Tantric tradition, in grammatical and poetic tradition, and in many other traditions, in their most psychological depths are constituted of a conscious power, a superconscient nature force. Sri Aurobindo says, it is this force, this Shakti, to which the old Vedic thinkers gave the name Vak, the goddess of creative speech, and the Tantric psychists supposed that this power acts in us through different subtle nervous centers on higher and higher levels of its force, and that thus word has gradation of its expressive powers of truth and vision. There are therefore different degrees or force of speech, each separately characteristic and distinguishable. So these are the things like we need to keep in mind while dealing with the speech. So there are plenty of materials which I have prepared, but what we need to keep in mind when we are coming to the computational linguistics and knowledge representation. So first, the Paninian grammar. Without it, and you see, like the grammar that has been the Vyakarana, Ashtadhyayi, that has been given to us by Maharshi Panini. So it is one of the finest examples of how the speech can be understood. Following what? So it provides a comprehensive framework for analyzing linguistic structure, including morphology, syntax, semantics, and the deeper aspects of these things. So we need to understand the Paninian grammar, the framework, the structure, the way Panini has presented the language. It's amazing. And all those who are new to this system, all those who are participating in this conference are and not yet introduced to the subtleties of Panini's grammar or even Panini's grammar. So first make it sure that you try to understand Panini's system well. The second, that we have Sanskrit lexical ambiguity. Sanskrit words often carry multiple meanings. You can even contemplate on a single word, like the poets, how they have used layers and layers of the meanings. For example, like you go to the Sandhana Kavyas. The point is, like, following the grammatical structures, even the grammatical rules and regulations have their own limitations. Grammar also cannot fully explain many aspects of the language. It has its own limitation. So sometimes when things are presented, people ask, like, how can grammatically this be explained? So that is why the Vyakarana and the Nirukta and then many aspects have to come together in order to understand the word, the meaning, the semantic value of a particular word. And context. Yes, our tradition is a contextual tradition. It's not a mere textual tradition. It is a contextual tradition. If you remove context, then many ambiguities will appear. The same word can mean, it is there in many other languages also. The other day in another conference, Ambaji was giving this example of the English word case. So how many different meanings, and you cannot just translate it, and that also creates difficulty in translating from one language to the other language. The word case in different contexts can give different meanings. The same way, like I have worked, I give usually in my class the examples of two words. One is a dead. How can we translate the word dead into any Indian language, and especially in Sanskrit? And the same applies to like from translating from Sanskrit to other languages, and especially in English. The word free, you cannot translate murta. The word dead cannot be translated as mruta everywhere. It will create a lot of difficulties. The translation will become ridiculous if the word mruta is used for dead everywhere. How will you translate my telephone is dead? How will you translate my, like it's a dead capital? How will you translate like he's walking dead slow? How will you translate like it's a dead letter? Similarly, like I'm a free man or I'm not a free man. I have no free time. It's a free access. It's free education. The word mukta cannot be used everywhere for free. So the contextual disambiguation is a crucial, is a is really crucial for accurate semantic presentation. So how do we manage with that? Different kinds of principles are to be adopted to understand the context. When I was doing my MPhil under the guidance of Professor Kutumba Shastri, I had taken up this topic that the how do we understand a particular text or the intention of the speaker, the vivaksha. How do we understand? And anyway, like I'm sure that Professor Kutumba Shastri is my teacher. He will be addressing and then speaking about tatparya and other things which are very much necessary for the computational people to understand. So then the subtle nuances, the semantic nuances of a particular word have to be kept in mind while dealing with these this kind of texts. So then we have, for example, compound words. Sanskrit is well known for its elaborate compound word formations. Sometimes the compound words are running to 1 or 2 pages, a single compound word. So this aspect of the language, it needs to be understood properly. All those who are getting initiated or introduced into this domain of knowledge representation using computational tools. So where multiple words can combine to convey complex semantic concepts. Understanding the semantics of these compounds, it requires sophisticated linguistic analysis. So it's a beautiful journey again to understand the language, getting into the spirit of the language, understanding these subtle nuances, entering into the spirit of what a rishi says, what a kavi says, what a speaker says in Sanskrit. These are the things that like one needs to be familiar with. Merely going by rules, also one cannot achieve the complete result. Then we have metaphorical language. And you said that the Sanskrit literature is so full of such things. It frequently employs metaphorical language and symbolic imagery to convey deeper philosophical, spiritual meanings. This is where, while using the computational tools in explaining or parsing or doing whatever things to bring out the meaning, so one finds it difficult. Like how these deeper philosophical and spiritual meanings have to be brought forth. Analyzing the semantic of metaphors, therefore, requires understanding cultural and contextual nuances, which I mentioned before also. And sometimes I feel that it is not the mere knowledge of computer, mere knowledge of grammar, mere knowledge of the language, which will helpfully give us. That is where our tradition has always given importance to sadhana, importance to going deep in meditation to understand, because the meanings, most of the times, I share my own experience with you all of my own Shabda sadhana. A single word, contemplating on a single word. I'll give you certain examples like how it happens and then what are the results which have been achieved. So by going through the grammatical tradition, mere grammatical tradition, I mean, sometimes I am questioning that how do you justify this grammatically? Grammar has its own limitation. It may not be able to explain fully. But then these meanings are very, very true in that particular context. And when we accept these meanings, then we go. But the beauty of our tradition, grammatical tradition, is that because our grammarians were the rishis by themselves. For example, like even Panini's structuring of the sutras, Panini has never deviated from the deeper sadhana, the spiritual aspect and the philosophical aspect of the language. If Panini is putting apadana, the fifth case, right in the beginning in the karak section, where it is usually expected that, like the first uh, karaka, which must appear in Panini's Ashtadhyayi, should be Kartrukaraka, because Karta is the first karaka, the first case, the nominative case, the agent, the Kartrukaraka. Then, like if you follow this order, Karta, Karma, Karana, Sampradana, Apadana, then Sambandha, then Adhikarana, then Sambodhana. So this is how we study structurally. But in Panini, the order is completely different. Like Panini's Karaka section begins with Apadana. Okay, when we follow the Paninian structure, why a particular sutra has to be in a particular place or in a particular order, that has its own explanation. Without that, without having Apadana right in the beginning, Panini's beautifully Panini himself has combined the spiritual experience, the philosophy of creation, the philosophy of life, how he has integrated into the very technical structure of itself. Just to give you one example, like I have written a small article on like why Apadana Panini has put right in the beginning, not looking at the from the Ashtadhyayi structure point of view that many people have written, and then it's a usual thing in the grammar classes. But I'm discussing about the different things from the philosophical point of view. Now, Apadana Panini says that Dhruvam apaye apadanam. So when there is a separation, so the fixed part, Dhruva, is the apadana. Vrikshat patram patati. Now we need to analyze this sentence. Vrikshat patram patati. The grammatical status of vrikshat, grammatical status of patram, grammatical status of patati. Okay, very well we can explain following the computational tools. We can understand through that using tools, using the processes by which it can be broken into further components and understanding all these components. But the deeper philosophical aspect here, now see why Apadan he has put it right in the beginning, that this is the beginning of the creation. The whole philosophy of creation is that creation is srishti, visrishti, visarga, visarjana. So it is a separation. The Dhruva is the eternal unmoving. The eternal unmoving, moving or separating itself from itself. Then we have the creation. So Panini has not forgotten to incorporate that, and how beautifully he has integrated the philosophy and his structure, his technique. That's why he gives important, like first is Apadan. This is where the whole creation begins. The eternal unmoving moves from itself. All movements proceeding from the eternal unmoving, the Dhruva. So when we keep and these are the things we need to again keep in mind while dealing with the knowledge representation. So there are many metaphorical aspects also, like I gave you the example of the Sandhana Kavyas. I gave you the examples of the Chitra Kavya. You take examples of many symbolic meanings which are, like the rishis, the kavis, how they have embedded so many meanings, deeper meanings into a particular word. Like if you contemplate on the Chitra Kavyas, now we can start even exploring like how the Chitra Kavyas can be well presented using computational tools. tremendous amount of work we need to do. So explaining the simple verses, the simple shlokas, subhashitas, or the text is easier. But when we deal with the deeper aspects of the text, so a lot of innovation needs to be brought forth to dive deep into the subtle nuances of the language. So I was, like pointing out that when I was doing my own dissertation under the guidance of Professor Kudamba Shastri on Vivaksha, on Tatparya, so there I had mentioned about one grammarian, Sharanadeva. Sharanadeva was a Buddhist grammarian. His work is called Durghata Vritti. Durghata Vritti, it's a difficult vritti, Durghata, difficult to understand. And he created this work in order to justify the Paniniyatva of many unpaninian words. So he has taken around 400 sutras of Panini to justify over 4,000 words which are considered to be unpaninian or doesn't fall into Panini's. It cannot be explained using Paninian system. Okay. Even there are many examples in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana, those which do not fall into the Paninian system. So merely, this is also like another challenge, that merely following Paninian structure, we cannot justify grammatically. Whatever, like finer tools, computational tools we may be using, merely following Paninian structure also, many words cannot be justified. Their real meanings cannot be brought forth, or the grammatical status cannot be brought forth, because in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, in Kalidasa, in many places, there are words which do not fall into the Paninian system. Now, here there are some scholars who have, and this is another study which, like the scholars also think seriously to work upon it. Even under my guru's, Professor Kutuma Shastri's guidance, there were certain works on Ramayana, the unpaninian words of grammar, Ramayana. They are studied. So some dissertations and theses, they were created by that, and many people have worked at. But there were some people, like there is a text. There are two texts, in fact, from our dear library, which are brought out, which deal especially with the unpaninian words. Apaniniya Sadhutva Prayoga Nirupanam is one work, and Madhu Toshini or Madhu Toshanam, another work, I don't remember the exact title, and then the Durghata Vritti of Saranadeva. In Durghata Vritti of Saranadeva, when we're talking about the contextual, cultural and contextual nuances, so how to understand the context? So he has employed more than 32 principles in order to prove, like set the context, in order to understand the context. 32 different principles. So we need to understand, while dealing with the knowledge representation through computational tools and dealing with such texts from the grammatical tradition, from the tantric tradition, from the poetic tradition, we need to extract and understand the different principles which were employed. And there are many people who are working on this. I don't say that the work is not happening, but making the people who are new to this and who are working on this field aware of many aspects which we need to keep in mind while dealing with. So just to give you a little example, like when we come to a sentence in Sanskrit, like when we are doing, trying to understand. So this is the usual thing that we teach in the class, while in the grammatical classes. Like suppose I say, Balakah Patati. So you have on one side a noun, and on another side you have a verb, a Kriya Pada and a Nama Pada. And then each Kriya Pada and each Pada, in fact, whether it is Kriya Pada or Nama Pada. So these are the two components you will find. All other parts of the speech, they will fall into these two categories, either the Kriya or the Nama. So now each pada has its own source, own prakriti. own prakriti. So that is why the prakriti has to be converted into pada. Then only it can be used in the language. Apadam na prayunjita. Never use the word which is not a pada. And what is a pada? We will explore that. Like first, the pada has to be formed from the prakriti. Now, see, the prakriti here is divided into these two. The prakriti of namapada is called pratipadika. The prakriti of kriyapada is called dhatu. Again, you can see the word dhatu itself is contextual. Dhatu can have so many meanings in different contexts, in different shastras. But when we are dealing with the grammar in the context of grammatical text, the word dhatu will mean the prakriti aspect, the base aspect of all the verbal words. So similarly, pratipadika, and then they have their own categories. So whether it is a pratipadika or dhatu, the pratipadika can be avyutpanna, non-derivative, or vyutpanna, derivative. Thus, dhatu also will be avyutpanna or vyutpanna. Now, when we deal with the pratipadika, the avyutpanna, for example, it cannot be further broken into. Yet, if you go to the etymology of Yaska or another, like especially like I read a lot from Sri Aurobindo's new philology. I will discuss a little bit going ahead about this. So, where every avyutpanna, what is treated as avyutpanna in the grammatical tradition, can also have its own root, own seed. Sri Aurobindo goes to the bija akshara, the bija of it, the seed form of it. So that's a different aspect which I will deal towards the end. But like you take the word kha or bala, so these are the words that are treated as avyutpanna. Now, vitpanna, pratipadika, you have three categories of vitpanna pratipadika. You have the krudanta, you have the tadhita, you have the samasa. Now, in krudanta, these are directly derived from the root sound. In tadhita, by adding certain suffixes, you derive the tadhita words from the avyutpanna pratipadikas. Okay. Then you have samasa, which are also like they are nominal words, but many nominal words, base words, they are brought together to form the compound. So each one has to be studied properly. So when we are designing or teaching in grammar class, so methodically, these are the aspects which we teach. Then you come to the dhatu, the same aspect, like you have the avyutpanna, like you take kru, but these are treated as avyutpanna, the primary root sounds. Then you have the vyutpanna, but again, like let me tell you, like in Sri Aurobindo's parallels, in Sri Aurobindo's philology, the kru, but they are not treated as the primary root sounds. They are also secondary root sounds. The primary root sounds, according to Sri Aurobindo, are the seed sounds. Like for example, you take the word e, a, ka. So each one is treated as a root sound, primary root sounds. So maybe moving ahead in the course of its evolution, Sanskrit has lost the root sense of many of these bija aksharas, but it is retained with many letters. Then you have the vitpanna, the five categories of the vitpanna derivative root sounds, the sannanta, nijanta, yanganta, yangluganta, and namadhatu. Now, if you take into consideration all these vitpanna root sounds and avyutpanna root sounds, it creates a like huge corpora of words, and all these things, they need to be understood in their perspective, in their context, when we are dealing with the semantic analysis or the semantic representation of the language. Going directly to the roots of this. So dhatu, avyutpanna dhatu, if you take, so there are about 2000 primitive or primary root sounds. And here primitive not in any other sense, but the basic primary root sounds which were captured by Panini. But please remember, if we follow the principles of the formation of the root sounds, and this is what I have understood from Sri Aurobindo, how the root sounds are created. So if we contemplate on that, Panini has been able to capture only these 2000 primary root sounds, but these are not all to Sanskrit. So if we follow the formation, the principles of the formation of root sounds, I have given a calculation of that in my book, Sanskrit and its Evolution of Human Speech. Sanskrit and the Evolution of Human Speech. So there I, following the explanation given by Sri Aurobindo, I've given there are more than 33,000 root sounds with the Deva Bhasha, the original form of Deva Bhasha, which contained. Now just imagine that from these 2000, approximately 2000 root sounds and then some, Sotra Dhatus and then the Nama Dhatus, that we can create more than 300 millions of words can be generated. Panini's grammar is a generative grammar, and then following these, ways of word derivation, principles of word derivation, we can create more than 300 millions of words, which itself is a huge, repository of the vocabularies. No other language, even if we put together all the languages of the world and then look at the wealth of their vocabularies all together, somewhere it will not match. But if we take into consideration again of the 33,000, more than 33,000 root sounds, following the principles of the formation of root sounds, then just imagine Ananta Vaishabda, endless, infinite. So that is where the Vyakarana, the separation of it, and that truly defines like how the computational principles are applied in understanding and then presenting the knowledge representation and understanding the text. So now just look at I'm presenting here the Sri Aurobindo's framework. The seed sounds are at the basis. The seed sounds are the 50 fundamental sounds or 48 or 46 fundamental sounds which we find in the Varnamala. So these are treated as the seed sounds, and from the seed sounds, the root sounds, then we have the primary root sounds, we have the secondary root sounds, we have the tertiary root sounds. Now, this is what is the simple presentation of Sanskrita Varnamala. That itself is so scientific and systematic. So a lot of effort is needed again to understand the subtle nuances of these. And then please remember, when we are talking about the semantic value of it, each character here, whether you say or or e or ka, ki, kha, kha, ki, apply all the vowel sounds here. Each one has multi layers of the meanings. If you find out, like if you go to Tantra Abhidhana, if you go to the Ekakshara Kosha, perhaps ours is the only tradition which has given to the world Ekakshara Kosha, the meanings of these monosyllabic sounds. And we have around above 30 ekakshara koshas available with us, and each ekakshara kosha is adding so many different layers of meanings to these single letters. Forget about the combination of these and then the words derived from these. Just these sounds have so many layers of meanings. So the semantic value, the amount of work that has been done in our tradition, and they need to be understood. What does mean? What does ka mean? And then all these meanings further can be reduced into the fundamental senses. So that's what, like Sri Aurobindo in his philology, he has done, that when Tantra is speaking and many other Ekakshara Koshas are assigning the meaning of Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, Parameshwara, Parameshti, like Krishna says, Aksharanam, Akarosmi. So all these highest meanings are assigned to A. Sri Aurobindo reduces all these meanings into one fundamental sense. He says A is the absolute state of existence. Then all the long letters, they manifest, they enhance, they enlarge, expand the meaning of the short letters. Like A is expansion. Like from A you can form Akasha, Anand, Asamantat. So it includes everything. It manifests the potential energy of its short letter. So like this again, there is another source of knowledge which is very much necessary for understanding the text before we move ahead explaining through the computational tools. Now we see these are the say, primary root sounds: pot, gum, lick, kel, uk, ug, ug. So how the root sounds are formed. Now, if you contemplate here, like the sound ka, what does it mean? Ka, what does it mean? Ki, what does it mean? So now you see, if you look at the Ekakshara koshas and what Sri Aurobindo has given as the meaning, the sound ka in its pure consonantal form has the sense of possession, sense of mastery, sense of creation, sense of action. This is what Sri Aurobindo calls it, like every sound has its own guna, own properties, own qualities, okay, own subtle nuances of the semantic sense, the semantic values. So now when we are dealing with a particular text, particular word, and giving their explanation using their tools, and we find it difficult to explain certain things, we have to go back to the root. We have to go back to their, the seed sense, the root sense, the root experiences, so then it can become understood. So where lexical meanings also like create a lot of difficulties, we go to the dictionary, we find multi layers of meanings. Primarily we have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 5, level 6, level 7. It goes on sometimes up to level say sometimes 50. But sometimes when we try to connect their meanings, we find it difficult, because there is some other process which needs to be experiential process which needs to be followed in order to arrive at the right meaning. So now this is what is our tradition's contribution in giving us the semantic value of so many words. I told you that like how the formation of root sounds happen. Like take for example the ka family. Ka can be combined with ka again, making it cock. This is a root sound. Kak, kick, keek, kook, kook, kruk, kruk, klurk, cake, kike, kook, coke. Then you can nasalize it using the same group. Kunk, kank, kyuk. Add the semi vowels. Crock, clock, quack. So the 33 root sounds, 1,000 root sounds that I mentioned a little before. So this is how the root sounds are formulated. So now this makes more thing like when we're trying to understand, like I give you this example, like why it is necessary that we understand the seed sounds, the root experiences. Now take for example the root sound stha. So sthala, sthavira, sthanu, sthatra, sthana, sthapana, sthaman, sthaya, sthain, sthavara, sthiti, sthira, sthula. So all these, they can be reduced to the single root sound stha. And what does it mean? To stand firmly, station oneself, stand up and get up, uh, take up a position on, to stand on the feet, to stay, remain, to continue, to be or exist. Multi layers of meanings. Dhatavah anekarthakah. And now you see, for example, like if you want to have a comparative study of it, look at any English word beginning with st or having st at the end or in the middle. They, conform to these meanings which stha contains: stand, stop, start, steward, still, station, stagnant, still, exist, establishment, obstinacy. So everywhere you can find. So it shows that understanding the root sound and the root experiences, the fundamental root experiences, how they help us in understanding the language, not just one language, many languages. So this is how, well, and then we can go ahead with the Gana division, how Panini himself has categorized. It's amazing to see the way Panini has worked out. The Paninian framework is one of the finest frameworks. which helps us even using the tools, and then how even new tools can be created for this. So the subtle differences of each group, like why they have to be 10. Similarly, you come to the pratyas, like I talked about prakriti. The pada needs to be formulated. So the pada can be formulated by adding suffixes, but prior to that, like you have these two kinds of suffixes, pratyayas, mula shabda nirmanaka pratyaya. Then you have the pada nirmanaka pratyaya. So you have the suffixes forming the secondary nominal basis, suffixes forming the verbal secondary verbal basis. Then we have the suffixes forming the secondary nominal basis and secondary verbal basis. So you have krudanta, tadhita, stri pratyaya, you have sandanta, nijanta, yanganta, yangluganta, namadhatu. So these are the pratyas by which we get directly the pada which are usable in the language. So just look at, like the pada nirmanaka pratyaya, like Panini simply puts it suktingantam padam. Or even if we go to Katyayana, so he takes sup and think as vibhakti and he says vibhaktyantam padam. Now this 21 suffixes here for the nominal words, and then 18 suffixes for the tinganta pratyayas. So this is how you have the mula shabda nirmanaka pratyaya, you have the pada nirmanaka pratyaya, the subantas, tingantas, how the words are derived. So it's a long number of slides which I have created. So how the final output one gets. So now just coming, before I conclude, coming the computational linguistic techniques for semantic analysis which are usually used. So the word embeddings, utilizing word embedding model such as word to web or globe to capture semantic similarities and relationships between Sanskrit words based on their contextual uses in large corpora. So the semantic role labeling, ontology-based knowledge representation, semantic parsing, cross-lingual semantic alignment. So these are the computational linguistic techniques for semantic analysis which are used, and then many more tools are being thought of, and then we get updation almost, like going ahead, and in the present cutting edge of technology when it is moving faster. So we will have many more new tools also to understand. But the point that I'm putting again and again here, still we need to find out where lies our own limitations in understanding the full meaning of the things when it comes to the spiritual text, when it comes to the rhetoric text, when it comes to the especially the chitrakavyas, the symbolic text. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind while applying and implementing all the applications and implications that we need to keep in mind. Semantic search and informational retrieval, so enhancing the research engines and digital libraries. So in the last 10 years, like one decade, you can see with the development of the technology, what amount of digital content which have been created, and then yet we need to keep updating the digital platform so then we achieve the target result. Language understanding and generation, improving natural language understanding and generation system by incorporating Sanskrit semantic analysis techniques, thus enabling more accurate and contextually appropriate communication. Cultural heritage preservation, facilitating the preservation and dissemination of Sanskrit cultural heritage by providing digital tools for semantic analysis, annotation, and exploration of Sanskrit texts. Interdisciplinary research. So, fostering interdisciplinary collaboration between Sanskrit scholars, linguists, and computer scientists to advance the state of the art in computational linguistics for Sanskrit and promote deeper cross disciplinary understanding. So, this is my conclusion that the intersection of Sanskrit and computational linguistics offers a rich range of linguistic and cultural exploration. By leveraging computational techniques for semantic analysis and knowledge representation, we can unlock the profound wisdom and insights encoded in Sanskrit texts, paving the way for new discoveries, applications, and collaborations in the digital age. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And then whatever is my little understanding and little contribution in this field, I shared with you all. The subject matter is really, really huge. It needs much deliberation. I hope this presentation helps to the participants in enhancing and bringing clarity to their understanding. Dhanyavad.
For this very enthusiastic presentation of the deeper background of our work. This should inspire us to have some humility about our current tools. We are somehow full of pride of our computers, our smartphones, all this communication technology. But what is really important is not so much electronics. It is a deeper understanding of communication. So it's information theory. And actually, who is the Adi information theorist? It's Panini. Yes, Panini Ashtadhyayi is not just a grammar. Yes, it's similar to some kind of virtual machine that explains very precisely how to.
I'm unable to hear. Sound is very, very minimum. I do not know what is being said. If there are any questions or anything for me, then someone has to maybe call me and tell me or type in the message. If there are no other questions or any further discussion, then I can leave the meeting.
Are there any questions?
Namaste. My name is Shankara Rama. So the taxonomy of classification that you showed for dhatus and pratipadikas, you had vyutpanna and avyutpanna. So where does the unadi pratyayas come under the dhatus? How would you classify the unadi pratyayas for the kriyapadas? Would they come under vyutpanna or avyutpanna or somewhere in between? Or? Yeah, that's my question. Yeah, I'll ask. Sorry. No, Namaste. My name is Shankara Rama here. So under the taxonomy of classification that you had shown, I wanted to know where would the unadi pratyayas come inside. So under the vyutpanna or... Okay.
Information, it shows the explanation of so many word derivation. Now if you add unadi, again it goes beyond.
Okay.
I have not put the unadi part in my presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's
okay. Thank you.
Well, I think we can thank our speaker again for his very motivational speech, and this should inspire us to do a lot more work. Yes, we have been only scratching the surface of Shabda. Yes, and now we want to understand to a certain extent Spota and ultimately Vak. So this was very inspiring. Thank you very much, Sampad, for your keynote speech.